What's up, guys? Tommy Carrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got an incredible guest today. Show starts right now. To just pick up on what we were just saying about being tired and doing this, the normal rules of like fatigue they do in a lot of ways, but they don't apply to podcasting. And I found that in like working out. I didn't want to work out this morning, but I dig deep and I listen to the Irish Catholic voice in my head that says legitimately. I just hear a voice just saying like, "You work harder." I'm always like, all right, like, and that's probably what's driven my family for centuries, and it's worked thus far. Other things in college, I always found there was like diminishing ceilings of like what I could do cognitively depending on how tired I was. You get an hour less sleep, okay, whatever. Once you get down to like 90 minutes or 2 hours of sleep, it's like I would know that, okay, I'm probably not learning new concepts today. That seems to be out of my reach, but I know I can hit the OChem flashcards. I know I can bullshit a English lit paper. But again, there's like diminishing, whereas working out it's pretty like you can just brute force it. I mean, cardio might kill you if
Oh,
you're
you get
that
hurt
tired.
though.
Yeah, but you can.
Yeah.
Podcasting is interesting, or any sort of live interview where, sorry, this is a siren. There's a certain level of like, I don't want to work out today, but fuck, I got up and worked out. I did
Yeah. Yeah.
guest canceled. All right, part of me is like, oh, you can just stay in bed. And I'm like, no, schedule a show right now so that you can't stay in bed. My point of all of this is once you get to kind of, but like the actual, are you able to have a conversation that's worth listening to? Anyone can have a conversation when you're tired. I get it. But if you're trying to put out a product, which is what it is, for people in the infinite sea of daily content produced, to pick yours and go, that's worth my time, or to pick yours and not have buyer's remorse and go, well, that was stupid. There is a weird thing where it's like, if you're too tired, there's like a handicap. Like you're better off just taking time. And it's a weird thing. And for someone like me or you or most of the people I know who are just workaholics, it's a frustrating thing to not be able to just grit your teeth and brute force it. But I mean, I've tried to do it. I've tried to do podcasts like 3, 4 in a day when you're barely sleeping. The guest doesn't have fun. The show's not worth watching, and it's not even isolated. It's if that's my first brush in with somebody, if that's the first episode somebody listens to, they might go, "That guy sucks." So you lose a first impression. So it's one of the few things I think where if you're actually tired, you have to step away. So that has nothing to do with this episode. This episode doesn't even have
Well,
a direction, but there you
I
go.
think it's a very salient point. So give me a second.
Yeah.
I think it's a very salient and important point for everybody, not just podcasters, but humanity trying to, you know, suck from the fire hose of information as, the Praetorians are trying to launch wars everywhere and psyop everything. It's like last week, I had to just take a week off and step away from Twitter and and the information flows and go get out in the hills of Southern California and see some family and go to a birthday party for the friend who turned 60 and you know what I mean? It just like and this was right when all the crap was going down with Israel and Iran. It's like, okay, there's other people talking this stuff. I don't know anything better than they do, and so I'm just gonna stay offline
Yeah.
and restore my dopamine because what I did understand about the whole Israel-Iran strike and stuff is that the thing that we need to suss out, really kind of think through is going to happen afterwards, right? How are those that were defeated in this thing going to try and turn that around to their advantage in these clever estrogens kinds of ways? And so I was like, all right, well, other people can talk the battle damage and the conflict, et cetera. It's like the same thing that just happened in Idaho
Oh
yesterday,
yeah.
right? It's just north of me up here a couple hours. And it was like, I don't need to opine on that. There's other people closer to the ground and people can do the tactical level analysis. And it's like, I'm going to wait and see how it gets played, right? Who's going to use it to craft what narrative? So I didn't chase that yesterday. I didn't put cognitive
Yeah.
energy into it.
Thing is, I think I said years ago on the show with somebody, it's like as the threshold gets higher and higher for shock value. I was like, and it's not a novel idea. I'm sure someone else thought of it, but I was like, someone's gonna shoot firefighters if you want, because even with school shooters, you still have pieces of shit that are like, well, you shouldn't be anti-trans. Like, there's a whole another level of just hell, but like, there are still some people in a twisted demonic reverence sort of defend it. I always thought, I was like, what's like the one thing you probably everyone would just be like about? I was like, someone's gonna shoot firefighters, and
Or EMTs.
yeah, I was like, some or
Yeah,
you had a car crash, somebody was gonna
yeah,
respond to a car, like that's something. But no, it's you can't you. It's like what Ramdas would say about meditating. He was like, you'd be meditating, and then a little thought would pop into your head, like, do I have any Dr. Pepper? And he's like, you gotta just you go and get the Dr. Pepper, you go check. He's like, but you do that enough days meditating. After the 500th time of wondering if you have a Dr. Pepper in the fridge, you go, we're just going to put that aside. I know it's there. And he goes, but I got to, I probably got to check the car insurance. You don't need to do that right now. He's like, so you start to get rid of the ideas, except for the important ideas.
yeah,
Like, did I just hear a bump in my kitchen? He goes, but the real truth is understanding that there are no important ideas. Something will always try to pull you into the
yeah,
important ideas.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I find
Or
whenever
distract you away from.
I
Yeah,
find
yeah,
whenever I did do what you did, kind of unplug for a little bit, there's always a seductive siren that's like, "Are you sure you want to back away? Because Trump just bombed Iran." You're like, "Ooh," and you start to reach for the crack pipe, and
yeah.
you're like, "No, you put it
You know what
down.
I did?
You
I
fucking put it
actually
down."
went up in the foothills where there wasn't cell reception.
That's how you do it. That's how you
Quite
do it.
literally.
That's dude,
Yeah,
that's what it's like at my parents' place. I'm like,
yeah,
it's forced meditation. You go up there and you're like, I have nothing. I can't even check old emails.
yeah,
Like, but it
exactly.
does. It tries to reel you in, and it's like, which bombed
Yeah,
Iran? You're like, but yeah, no, I mean, unless it's something that's like at your front door, you do kind of have to unwind from it. And I always kind of think like whenever I find myself kind of pontificating about like what I opened with, about how there are times where you have to unwind a little bit. There's always a part of me that's like, or are you just being a pussy? But I always think like, yeah, no, I mean, during wartime, all luxuries are normally spared, but they always keep morale going. I'm like, well, that tells you something. Morale's not like, what are your proper pronouns? Like, even during like, the Battle of London or something, like they're like, got to keep morale up. And it's like, that says something. If even
rest.
during total
R and
war,
R.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
during
yeah.
total war, they're still like, got keep morale up.
You got it. So, thing that humans have to recognize, and we have to realize our brain's a drug addict, and it runs off three drugs: norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin.
Hell yeah.
And it can only produce so much. And 90% of that's not produced in the brain, it's produced in the gut, the microbiome, and goes through the gut brain
Brain
axis,
access.
et cetera. Right. But um, our biological system only has so much capacity to produce the 30 different variants of dopamine and the 14 or whatever of norepinephrine and the 20 something is, you know what I mean? It only has so much capacity. You burn that out, you can compensate a little bit with, the homologs and or just pure synthetics.
Yeah.
But even those have one, because they're not organic and they're not organically produced, they have vastly lower sufficient. So at certain points, even in war and conflict, even when you're right in it, you know, even when you're in a serious argument with somebody, and you might even be winning the argument, but at a certain point you tap out energetically, you know, the drug addict, your brain runs out of the drugs, and you're done. You got to step away. And you got to be able to see that before it happens, because otherwise then you've gotten yourself into a situation you've
Redlining.
lost. Yeah, exactly.
Who
Yeah. And I think a lot of people need to do this. Like Sean Newman's off right now with his family, and he made this comment that, last year, a couple of years ago, he did the same thing with a family, and in the middle of it, some major event happened, right? And he had to make that argument.
there was, I'm trying to find, I don't need to find the exact quote right now, but in the book Blitzed by Norman Ohler, which is a fantastic,
Oh, great.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
sort of
There's
like,
great documentary on it too, I
yeah,
think. Yeah,
I
yeah.
had him on my show in 2020. I fucking love
Oh,
that
no,
guy.
no way.
Yeah, I had him on. I was like, I just love the narrative. I love everything
Mm,
about it. But there's one line from it in particular I always remember, and it's when they started sending pervs into the Wehrmacht during the
mm.
what a siege of Stalingrad or Leningrad, one of like the
Yeah,
brutal 1,000 day slogs,
Stalingrad,
and
yeah.
whoever was heading up like the ground forces was talking to Theodor Morel, who was Hitler's pharmacist, and said, "What you have to understand, this is not wheat. This is the whip. Meaning, this is for
Yes,
blitz. This is for
yes.
36 hours, shock and awe, hit
Yeah,
them,
yeah,
take them off guard." He was like, throwing it at Stalingrad is a waste.
yeah,
What are you doing? And that is important, I think, to remember. If it's Friday, I did 5 6 shows. I got one more show. I didn't sleep well. There's the whip. I'm just like, I'm sober now, so I can't even look
caffeine.
forward to
Yeah, yeah.
alcohol.
But caffeine or
But I'm just
something.
like,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
weekend.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna have an extra coffee. It's the weekend. I got 3 days off. Put my feet up. I can do nothing. There's like but that cannot carry you through really
no,
more
no.
than
And you're going to pay for it, right?
yeah,
You're going to have a pay for. So they're doing this with the Ukrainians in the war now. They've been doing it for the last couple of years, pumping them up on amphetamines,
yeah,
synthetics, and
yeah,
shoving them. Yeah,
yeah, and and I think that that's sort of like that's something that for me at least personally is tied into this podcast is that it's just the long slog. You definitely have times where you can use the whip,
yeah,
but like it's a long slog. Like I don't there is no other way I think to build whatever it is I've made. People ask like what should I do? I'm like you gotta have, shows, you gotta, be interested, blah blah blah. 99% I'm like, dude, you just buckle in, like don't start running. Like you have to walk to the horizon. And that's not like a fun realization to have that there is no sea. Like I went shooting with Dale and Ted Eye one time, and they were like, there are no secrets. We don't
no,
have. Sure, there's maybe like secret, thermal imaging or something, but they're like, in terms of like drawing and shooting,
yeah, yeah,
you can Google it. It's all right there.
yeah.
You got to put 100,000 rounds through it, and
So contributions to life, real contributions to the world around us really only come in one of two ways: a sprint, and then you die young, like the 27 Club,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or it's an endurance event that goes on for almost a century. And that sometimes you can do, if you're doing the endurance thing, sometimes you can do some sprinting here and there, but you're going to pay for it
yeah,
later. So I don't know. I've seen it in kids, young kids. I've seen it my daughter and her friends as they were growing up, and you can see the kids that are on the sprint path. And you can see the kids that started on the sprint path, but then something changed, and now they're more on, they're getting more, they're still teenagers now. So, they're getting more on the endurance path. And I'm watching that happen with her whole group, actually. But it's
sure,
like Gen Z is getting on this more, unlike the younger millennials who've been on the sprint path, these Gen Z kids, they're slowing down. They're drinking less, they're not doing drugs, they're moving. It's like they're settling in for this long contribution, this,
mm.
triathlon of a life.
And I almost like it more. There's almost something to me about like right when I started the podcast, I just remember doing as many shows as I could. And like as it slowed down, part of me berated myself. Part of me was like, no, this is real. You you can go do the first week of working out, January 1st. Like, how do you maintain? And so then yeah, and I kind of feel this to I guess to tie it into bigger events. I feel like that's like what this past January was they came in sprint, which is good. I get it. I mean, you want to just come in, it's a blitz, you won. They tried to blow your head off last summer.
Yeah, create a breach.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I got
get
to breach the wall.
yeah, flood the zone. I get it. No, I get it.
Yeah,
But it feels now like it's you gotta slow it down
They
and
are. Yeah.
be like, yeah, dude, you haven't even been in for 6 months. It's
Yeah.
like slow down. You got what 12, 24, 40. You got 42 left. Gee, yeah, that's a long. I just thought about it. That's a long time, and the opponent knows that as well. And that's kind of what I feel like Iran, Israel is just like another. It's like one more arrow in the elephant. They're just trying to slow it down. Do you believe that's what it is to try to slow down the current, as you said, the war against the mob state? Do you think that's what it is? Is like because Elon Trump, they come out like a cannonball on fire, and now you can see it's losing some momentum.
So
That would be if I'm them, if I'm the mob state. That's yeah, that's the strategy all day long. Yeah, burn them out.
I have a slightly, so while I don't disagree, right? It's, it's,
That's not my set in stone opinion. I'm just
yeah, no, no,
flying
no,
from the
no.
seat of my pants right now.
Um, uh, when engaged in a only, in a winner take all kind of fight, and you're going up against a very dug in and entrenched enemy with all kinds of booby traps and et cetera that you don't know what they are. So you do like the Russians have been doing in Ukraine. You just do a slow, steady, you come out hard and fast, just like they did, and you say, okay,
You
we're doing this
sprint
and
up
we're
to the
here
front line and
right up
bang.
to the right. And it's like, okay, we're here. You want to stop now? Right? First 100 days, right? You want to stop now? And we work this out. We sit at the table and we talk and we come. No? Okay. Well, we're committed now to the long haul. And what we're going to do is we're going to deplete you and we're going to get you to highlight all of your booby traps and all of your networks and all of your, trenches and everything else. Well, that's what Israel, Iran was. Iran just, Israel just burned probably 20 years of intelligence work in one 12-day exercise and got their ass handed to them. Okay.
Israel?
So, yeah, yeah. Like, are they going to be able to do those kinds of, attacks on Hezbollah again or Hamas or, well, not Hamas, but Hezbollah, like with the pagers? That took at least 5 years to put in place.
That's a good point. You are
Are they going
burnt.
to be able to do like they did in Iran with all that? That took probably 20 years to put in place.
But at what point though is it sure they burned those sources and methods and blah blah blah? At what point though do you have to do that? Otherwise, it's just like
Well,
expired intel.
well,
So I'll stop interrupting.
yeah, I mean it's a no, 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 no. I mean it's a point, all these things have a limited life,
Oh, well,
right? So if you're going to use it now, but if you're going to use it, it better work. Right? What's that thing about if you're gonna go for the king, you better not miss,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or yeah,
right?
never asked the way to the king's cauldrons.
Yeah. So I want to, so I agree with all of that, but I want to go and I personally believe this is me. I think this is what's happening in Ukraine. It's what's happening in Israel, Iran, is as the empire is pulling back, the empire is pulsing little things out there and getting all of these illicit networks and all these resources and all these covert stuff that the empire has laid down over the last 300 some odd years and is getting them to highlight themselves, right? Get them to activate and burn them out and exhaust them militarily, resource wise, relationships wise, highlight all the revenue flows, all of the cash, all this complex stuff. And it's doing that because the empire has to pull back to reset itself. It just can't support the empire anymore, manpower wise, more than anything else had related to the debt. We just don't have the militaries, the martial capacities, and robotics are proving not to be capable of it because there's counters for all of that, right? When you're trying to rely on technology, everything that the move, counter move, technology, counter technology evolves at the pace of tech, and that's pretty damn fast, right? As we're seeing in the fields of Ukraine. So you got to burn all those things out so that they're not used, they don't come together in coalitions, and they don't come with righteous indignation and use those resources and assets, et cetera, against the coward of the empire. So I suspect that's what's going on. But I want to go back to the beginning part of the question or the thought. Um, I used to do oil futures trading for, my kind of daily income several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And that's what I did pretty much all day when I wasn't writing. Well, I'd write after the markets closed, right? Um, in 2022, early 2022, and I worked in high frequency algorithmic trading back in the day, designing logic systems, et cetera, back in the 2000s. So I understand how the systems work, and I did my computational engineering doctoral studies. Didn't finish my dissertation, so I'm not a FUD, but I understand it. Um, what I started to notice in movements in the options markets, and then in then the correlate, the correlated reaction in seconds later in the options markets was that there was substantive noise being put into the algo trades. Didn't make sense, right? Somebody, and this was happening in the overnight markets and then during the regular market times, et cetera. Somebody was adding noise, and then every once in a while you just see a noise bomb, which is a composite of different kinds of trades in different areas, different markets, et cetera. What were they doing? Well, they were throwing off all the algorithmic trading engines with information bombs, sophisticated trade, because these algorithm engines had become so optimized, almost 90% of all transactions on all the markets is digital, right? It's algorithms competing against algorithms, very sophisticated ways. Well, how do you defeat or how do you disrupt a very sophisticated, robust, billions of dollars a year in infrastructure, tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions a year in revenues, income, algorithmic systems? You hit them with information bombs.
Hmm.
You don't try to, shut down the data centers, et cetera. No, 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 no. You dump. And it's a lot like Havana syndrome. We're finding that's working in the body from targeted energy weapons. What is that? How is the targeted energy weapon doing? It's dumping an energetic payload into that body that the body's bioelectrical, biochemical systems have to work out. Well, you do the same thing with the markets. Well, now you've got things like Palantir and all of this other. If you're going to defeat an enemy who's using algorithms and sophisticated algorithms for psyops, for narrative crafting, for markets, for all this stuff, you've got to hit them with these information bombs that cross multiple domains, right? And that's what the first 100 days was. It was just shock and awe, but it wasn't shock and awe, all the stuff we saw. It was shock and awe of all the fine tuning of all the algorithms that have been, that all these entities are using, and the decision analytics is really what that is. So that it disrupted the whole informational space such that um, now the potential to undo some of these things, highlight some of the things, draw them out in the open, dry their money sources up, cut through their narratives, et cetera, is possible. And you have to do that every once in a while, right? Every once in a while in this conflict, we're going to get something like this, just informational, seven domains of power kind of shock and awe kind of thing. Because the way in which the estrogens work is narrative, right? It's all narrative ownership and ownership and crafting of the narrative and the titles and the descriptors and the valuations and all this symbolic language and mathematical stuff. And you've got to disrupt it because it's riddled through absolutely everything that we do because of the way data and information flows around the world, driven by data brokerage firms.
One of my favorite conspiracies is, you remember the fake ballistic missile threat to Hawaii in like 2018 or something?
I don't actually.
There was a false EMS sent out to everyone on Hawaii.
No. Oh,
Every
I do remember that. Yeah,
nuclear
yeah, yeah,
missile
yeah.
inbound.
Yeah, yeah,
Insane. Well, like
yeah.
they also have, well, Fort Meade in Maryland, and then the Utah data center. So I don't know, the third, but it's like the third biggest NSA hub. So I think that's where Snowden was, or maybe on Oahu. It was in a former, I think, ammunition depot from World War II. So just a
Mm,
giant cement
mm.
dome under the
Yeah,
island.
yeah, yeah.
Great place. And my favorite conspiracy was that because Trump was in these like a year in, 2 years in, and fighting the deep state. My favorite conspiracy is like the only way because that was a backup to the NSA, but it's like that could be another silo of stuff. Maybe because
Mm.
nothing's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
monolith. Maybe they have stuff there. So the theory is like, all right, the white hats have control of maybe Fort Meade or something. Bad guys have Oahu. You fire a missile because that's the only way to get that one to do like an emergency protocol and beam it all back to the mainland. Is it horseshit? I would imagine almost certainly, but the
Maybe
idea,
not.
or not, but
Yeah,
nonetheless, even if
yeah,
it's a movie,
yeah,
the idea
yeah.
I think is somewhat
It's valid.
related to what you're
It's
talking about.
valid.
How do you get
Yeah,
it to
yeah,
dump everything?
yeah.
Make it think it's, you know,
Or to your point that you brought up earlier about use it or lose it, you get them to activate kill switches
hmm
that I targeted against you so that, they're booby traps, they're poison pills, so that you can see what they are and you can undo them.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's got to be what it's like, or yeah. I mean, even like little shit. Just like to me, it's funny. I mean, I get the whole, you say something, then you see the advertisement on your phone. To me, it's like exaggerated a thousandfold because of this podcast. Everyone I talk to, so it's
Mm,
almost like there is no accurate, like or accurate enough like package for me. Like before I ever started the
yeah,
podcast,
same, same. Yeah,
you'd be
yeah,
like,
yeah,
man, I wonder what the new Xbox Series
yeah,
X costs. And then sure enough, you see
uh,
an ad that. But because of this podcast, it thinks I'm completely schizophrenic. It has no
yeah.
idea what to hit me with. But it's interesting to see like what it tries to hit me with. It'll be like, do you want this book also by whoever? Or it'll be like, are you interested? Yeah, like I'm sure I will
I
get
don't.
some article about
Uh,
oil futures today.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't have the excuse of a podcast. I have brain injuries. It's
I didn't do this. This was someone else. This was I didn't. This is dementia. I don't know, man. It's like that. It's like that link, and it's like when you Google like brain injury problems, and the link is
yeah,
already purple. And you're like, fuck.
yeah.
But
Well, I mean, but I bring out the brain injury one somewhat jokingly, right? But for about 5 years, I mean, well,
sure.
about 8 years actually. I was dealing with that pretty seriously. But if you look at the way Trump behaves, he's doing exactly that. He's making it so that the algos that are doing behavioral predictions of him, behavioral models, can't set on anything. So the only thing they set on is he's a narcissist.
Yeah.
And I hear it from all these old analysts, and I respect the hell out of them, Larry Johnson and these other guys, and I respect the hell out of the work
Sure.
they've done. But all I hear is, and not just him, but others as well, and younger pundits as well, is everyone's and Ritter and et cetera, that he's this, he's that, he's a narcissist. It's like, no. What he's doing is before we even had all the digital algorithms, he learned at a young age that you got to throw people off so that they can't get into some predictive modeling so that they can try and control you. You know who does that extraordinarily well? Women, estrogens. They do it intuitively.
Yeah. It's
Why?
it's
It's
not.
too, yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I had on a guy like years ago. He was a forensic psychiatrist, Zev
Mm,
something,
mm,
former IDF guy,
yeah,
and he was talking about like forensic analysis, and he's like, you're probably not doing it at like your local accounting firm, but once you get to the
yeah,
nation state level where
yeah,
you don't have to spare anything, it's like
yeah,
McDonald's and
yeah,
Disney have whole departments and have for 50 years that analyze
yeah,
dreams. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
your
yeah.
local bodega isn't doing that, but they can. So once you get to the nation state level where you can throw anything at anything, yeah, it's not at all out of the realm of possibility to bring on some full time MD who specifically just watches speeches of Kim Jong Un. Is he going through? Is he? Is
There's
his heart?
basements
Is
in
it?
CIA that does
Oh
this
yeah,
and DIA and
but at the
yeah,
higher levels, you can just
yeah,
assign one person
yeah,
to
yeah,
one
yeah,
world
yeah.
leader and be
Or
like,
a team.
does he look
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
depressed? Does he look
yeah,
anxious? And then
yeah,
I asked him, I'm like, well, it would make natural sense that you would also have a forensic psychiatrist looking at your own president, and then have that psychiatrist say, "What image do you want to give off?" Because Russia has a forensic psychiatrist looking at you. You want to make them look a little. How would I look depressed? Just rub your eyes during the speech today and kind of have a blank stare. Look at the back of the room instead of the front. Okay. Well, then is that what Putin's doing? Does he actually look tired, or does he have a counter forensic psychiatrist going and like? So no,
Well,
it
here's what I'll
makes sense at the
say.
highest level of
Yeah,
like Predator. It makes sense.
yeah. So totally. So the behavior that you have to portray though as a leader is the culture and civilization of your organization.
But then that's the thing is you also don't want to look like a pussy to your own people.
Correct. So you've got to demonstrate, however, whatever, right? And what does this say is that Putin, when you listen and then you hear and then he sees what he does, he's always shooting straight. No deception, no dissimulate, no dissembling. It's all here's where it is. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what we're doing. And then they do it, right? Even if it costs ludicrous amounts, like right now, 100,000, Russian lives and 1.5 million or more Ukrainian lives, right? That's Russian civilization. You look Russian, if you look weak in Russian civilization, or you look disorganized, or you look like you're something that's dishonest, they'll tear you to pieces. In the United States, which is, English, but Britishized, English civilization is more the brawlers, right? The pub brawlers. That's really at the heart of, you know, English civilization. Scots, Welsh, Irish, English. We're the English civilization. We're all pub brawlers. I mean, that's our nature, our instinct. You don't look weak to those guys, right? The other problem, though, is that we're an estrogen-rich society and civilization. We have been since the 1600s because we've been occupied and dominated by continental European fucks. And what do? They lie all the damn time. They dissemble all the damn time. They say one thing and do something else. They come at you with something that doesn't mean damn thing and might or might not have happened, might have been a dream or whatever. So Trump's moving in that space in his own culture and civilization, and he's trying to lead. And I've watched this in corporation, major banks and corporations, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So it's not just the individual. The individual is having to play to two audiences. One is the external audience, and the other one's the internal audience. And he's playing it well
That's like
because truth of the matter is, and we need to get back to the pub brawler side. That's really what needs to happen is get back to being English. And what is that? We're pub brawlers. Like the conversation you and I had, life's a freaking bar fight, right? We need to get back to that, and we need to get rid of this whole, estrogens, continental European, eternal war, reality warping bullshit.
isn't that kind of the idea behind like the quote unquote like gentlemanly tit for tat, kind of what we saw with Iran hitting the I'm not even pronounce gonna pretend to pronounce the Qatari air
Cutter.
base,
Yeah.
but that's because he got like this hyper machismo like radical
No.
religious theocracy. What just
Uh,
whether it is or not, or what you cannot look like a pussy in front
correct.
of a Middle Eastern pop. I would imagine
Correct.
it doesn't
Correct.
fly. If you can
Or the
throw
rest
at
of the
yeah,
world.
if you can throw acid at your wife for going outside, like you got to do something. But you probably also are intelligent enough if you've risen to that level to know that like you will absolutely be skull by the U.S. military. So there has to be some middle ground of like we're gonna launch these rockets. I also don't want to be hit with some directed energy weapon from orbit. So I'm doing this so that they don't behead me. But hey, here's a
And
fair
we knew
warning.
that. That's why we dropped bombs on nothing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right. So, and here's the crazy thing. We don't know that that enriched uranium wasn't already in Russia because Russia had offered to take that and store it
Well,
securely already.
didn't something come out? They said that like Intel shows something like 250 dump
The
trucks
trucks,
left,
yeah. Well, that was
Natanz or
leaving.
something
So they were
before.
dumping, and then what were they taking out?
Yeah,
Right. So, point being is that
So then was that not even the original? Was that itself like
It's all
a
performative
gentlemanly to
theater.
what
And
the
what was it? It was to shut up the neocons. It was to shut up the Praetorians,
Jesus?
to rob them. And then okay, so here's the other thing, right? At that high, again, I call this the sport of kings. It's what it's been called for millennia. Kings have to, kings, queens, but really kings, princes have to operate very differently. And a lot of what they do, the one thread that they have to maintain is they have to be honor based. You got to do the theater and you got to do the things, you got to lie and you got to this and you got to that. But it's what keeps the world from going nuclear, right? And so I'm going to go back to the bar fight. When you and I were bouncers, what was the thing that we wanted most? We wanted those two guys to get it narrowed down to those two guys. We wanted them to go outside the parking lot. And we would even send some guys out and make sure that didn't get out of
Get
hand
it?
or
Yeah,
nobody came with a gun or a knife, and we'd let
yeah,
them duke it out. If we couldn't get them outside, it's exactly what you said about the fire break and the
yeah.
talk
You
with
wanted
Tom.
it in.
We'd isolate them off in the bar and we'd let them duke it out, right? And then we wouldn't let it go too far. Well, sometimes, right? So throughout most all of human history, honor-based fighting has been a tradition across the board in every society and every civilization until the 20th century in the Western civilization, and actually over the last 300 some odd ish years on the continent of Europe. So what are we seeing in the world today? Yes, we're seeing all the deception. We're seeing the character play, the leaders acting out the character that is the leader of their civilization, but they recognize each other and they understand very thoroughly the context in which that other leader is conducting themselves, such that what they say and what they articulate and how they say it and how they conduct themselves is not what's paid attention to. That's all for consumption internally, generally, and for other audiences outside. What they're paying attention to is what do you actually do? That's what men do, right? Estrogens want us focusing on all this noise as if that matters because that's what they do. That's all they got. Why? Because they don't have the strength to do. So that's what's happening. Now, again, the, we are living in a world where most of the analytics at business level, finance level, and at intelligence, nation state action level is being driven by algorithms that were designed by people who went to liberal arts schools and don't know all about how the world actually works at any scale. So but they're woven into everything and they're very complex and very sophisticated. And so that's really the enemy that you're up against. So how do you throw them off? How do you get them to think that you're either crazy or you're going along with what they want? It's the same, man. How many times have you and I been in the bar fight and we just agreed with the person? Yeah, man, that happened and man, they shouldn't have done that. And, just a total line of bullshit because personally, I'm sitting there going, yeah, he should have knocked you the out. Right. But I'll bullshit you, whatever, I might even get you a drink and get you out of the bar. You know what I mean? Or give it time so we get the other people out. You know what I mean? It's like, do you think that, not you personally, right? But do we think that doesn't happen at the nation state level?
My experience, like so, like yeah, the bar fights, but it just made me remember, like even like a higher level. So like bar fight, you could still be like, all right, it's kind of like lower level and blah blah blah. And but I remember, I think it was New Year's Eve, 2010, and I was at the University of Valdosta, and whatever, I don't know why I'd stay there over Christmas, whatever. And the neighboring fraternity, like our fraternity and that fraternity, have been like rivals forever or some shit. And there's like a long history of like breaking windows and slashing tires, and it was kind of like the Middle East. It would
Yeah.
rise and it would fall, and it would over deck. I mean, legitimately like back to the 70s. And I remember I got so up with one of my friends, and we went over there in the middle of the night and we realized it was empty. They were all out of town. And when I mean like destroyed the house, I mean like We ripped the doors off the hinges, pulled the ceiling fans down, took all their Greek Week trophies and lit them on fire. Like threw a cinder block through their, or not through, destroyed their. I mean, like legitimate criminal things, and stole their couch. Pulled it over like across our lawn into our house. It looked like a murder scene. And like we woke up the next day and there's like the like police are there and everything. Very long story short, it was like so eventually I was like I'm gonna go to jail for this. Like this is I'm 20 years old. Like I'm an adult. And so I was transferring to University of Georgia the next year
Mm.
because I was pre-med guy, I was straight A guy, but when I went crazy, I went crazy. And
You're
so like
Irish.
yeah, and so like I remember I talked to like and obviously everyone in that fraternity wanted me dead, rightfully. And I remember I talked to like their like the president of their fraternity, and he came over and like he was much more calm and collected. He wasn't whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he was going to law school. He was 2 years older than me. He was going to law school the next year. And like the stolen couch was in my room, so like he sits down and looks at it, and he's just and like I had burned all these like picture like we'd take these big
Mm.
framed pictures and burn them. I didn't know that was like the collage they had of like brothers who had passed on early.
Oh,
I saw I'm like I'm a bad man, and I'm like yeah, and like he doesn't give a shit, and I'm like dude, I like he's like I know you. He's like you're like I studied so much that was like my reputation. He's like you're like the pre med guy, and I was like dude I'm gonna go to jail for this. He's like yeah they want you dead, and I was like well what was like the total damage of everything, and it was like $3,500 or something. This is in 2010 as a 20-year-old, which is might as well be a $1 billion. And I was like, can I just like pay it and then like you leave me alone? He's like, and he said he's like they will throw me out of that
yeah,
fraternity
yeah, yeah,
if I
yeah,
don't if I don't
yeah,
kill you. And he's like, and I can't get thrown out because all of my accomplishments there, or it's also what's getting me into law school.
yeah,
Luckily, I had had a summer job 4 years prior in high school and saved every penny and bought a bunch of Apple stock. And so I had turned $2,000 at age 16 into, I think, $10,000. And I was like, this is an SEC school where there's huge fraternities. These are small fraternities, 50
yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah.
if even. They're also a small school where it only takes like $100 to throw a party on a Friday. So again, it's not Alabama or UGA where they have, $1 million parties. I was like, well, how much does it cost for you to throw like a crazy party? It's like $100. And like I literally pulled up my laptop, pulled up E Trade, and I was like, I will sell all of these stocks right now. I will cut you a check for $10,000. You go back and tell them that I was on my hands and knees groveling, crying. And the only
Yeah,
reason you didn't push for me to go to jail, because if I go to jail, I have to pay the 3,500 and then that's it. If I give you 10 grand, this is a small school. You can throw a killer party every weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the rest of your time as president. You go out as like Mount Rushmore,
yeah,
as
yeah, yeah.
as the GOAT, the best
The Animal
ever.
House.
Like
Yeah,
the parties that you normally do once a semester, you can do them 3 times a weekend for the next 6 months. And he looked at me and I was like, but I want it in writing from y'all's lawyer that you're going to drop everything. I was like, I'm transferring to UGA. I'm out of here. You'll never see me
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah.
You're going to law school. You'll never see me again. What do you want? And he was like, you're a cocksucker. And like got the thing written, signed everything. And the story went that I was on my hands and knees groveling. I
Yeah,
transferred the
yeah,
out of there. It was going to be breaking
yeah,
and entering, theft, arson, property destruction. So it was going to be, I think, it was going to be a quintuple felony. Got it all dropped. I got into med school. He got whatever. My point is at a bar level bar fight, and I can't believe I had thought about this the last time we talked. It's like lower stakes. That was legitimate, like money. That was him trying to get into law school. It was me trying to get into med school. These are two fraternities that hate each other. And like I saw even there that if you can both save face, or for me, not save face, but get my ultimate goal, which was from college is going to go by one day. I'm going to go be a doctor. You get to save face and you still get to not be, hung by your fraternity. And like the rule was the rule is I would never tell anyone that. Now, granted, it's been 15 years. I doubt he gives a like whatever. But the
uh,
rule was like, yeah, I'll get you all this money right now, so I'll sign it over. You get to be a pimp. You get to go down as like the greatest president
uh,
ever. You get to
uh.
tell him you had my head on a platter, and I'll get the out of here and never tell the story. And he was just like, yeah.
So,
He's like, you're a piece of
so
shit, but like, yeah.
imagine this is a perfect example. So now imagine the exact same scenario. However, you were intransigent. You didn't give a, but your chapter president did, and he was the one that talked to their chapter president, and they worked out, here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're going to make it look like. And I can't, if I don't do something where,
Well, there's another interesting twist to it. Our chapter
yeah, yeah, yeah,
president wasn't going to law. He was just a normal dude.
yeah,
And I look back at it now, and he was probably 22 at the time. Now I'm 12 years his senior. But his thing was like we were already on thin ice for shit we had done over the years,
yeah,
slashing
yeah,
trucks, tires, and everything.
yeah.
I remember when he came to you, he's like, dude, you're my buddy. But he's like, if it's
I'm gonna have to
you or the
burn you.
fraternity, he was like,
Yeah,
and he's like, and I'm also telling you, man, I'm just letting you know if somebody broke into my house at 2 a.m., he's like, you're getting my 9 mil. He's like, you're lucky you
yeah,
weren't shot and killed.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like, I wasn't even mad at him. No part of me was like, no, you got to have my back. I was like, I can't even like be mad at you. So there
yeah.
was no other thing. Is our president was like, this is a radical terrorist cell.
Yes, yes, yes. So very, I mean, this is a
It's
great, now
perfect.
scale that
Yeah.
up to a nation, right?
Yeah.
Scale it up to a nation where you got three frat boys, in this case, CIA operations, and they're out of control and they're raging, right? And they go do some horrible shit somewhere, and they're doing it all the time. And I and the other leaders have got to figure out how the hell we keep this from getting out of control because both houses get burned down. Maybe the whole campus gets nuked, right?
No one wins.
I remember when the Hells Angels went to civil war with each other, it got bad and it got bad quick. And then soon enough, it's in 80 different countries. And right. So when you So it's a great analogy, right? Same thing with the bar, same thing. So it's you always got rogue assets, rogue entities, forget me, but you always got rogue members of your own family, in your own house, in your own whatever institution, organization, et cetera. You're not ever in total and absolute control. It just doesn't work that way. And so you've got to figure out how you know, your frat house president didn't come in and behead you and give them your head on a platter. Right? That does happen historically in some places, et cetera. But, it's this complex weave in which these people have to operate, how they have to play the sport of kings, sport of princes. And it's don't pay attention to what is said, pay attention to what is done, what is actually done. Let people the only people who really get upset about words, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. The only ones that get upset about words are the ones that aren't good with sticks and stones,
Yeah.
the estrogens,
Yeah.
right? Real men are like, oh, that's, and healthy women too, right? I don't mean to just make this, the testosterones of men and women too. They're just healthy, balanced, et cetera. They're like, yeah, well, that's a load of shit. That's an interesting line. I'm not going to engage with that. That's artificial and made up and unreal, right? I'm going to pay attention because I want to know what you're trying to do to me, but I'm not going to engage with that garbage. Now I'm going to watch what you're doing and I'm going to pay attention to that. So, scale up that event with the frat house to a nation, which is millions of frat houses and some of them giant frat houses, et cetera.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So, if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels, go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
The thing is, they did eventually get nuked. I think both were eventually kicked off campus like 10 years later. It was long after we were all gone. But I think, no, because I remember hearing about it, like, it was like in the news. Like,
Oh,
there had been like guns pulled.
escalation.
And the
Yeah.
campus was like, get the I don't even disagree with them. You can't have, we
Yeah,
never,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
somebody had pulled out like a 357 or something at a party. I was like, dude, you can't. But then rightfully, even bigger, the hegemony, the dean was like, you're out of here.
You're out
Because
of
even they
here.
have an interest of like, they don't want to kick you off. Like, what
Correct.
do you think 18-year-old
Correct.
dudes are doing? If they can't go to UGA, which is the big school, Valdosta was the second biggest. They want to go have frat party light. Like not it's not quite as
Yeah, yeah,
crazy as
yeah.
UGA, but it's better than the community college. You can still be in a frat party. There's Greek week, there's kegs, all the shit. They
Yeah.
don't even want to kick that. So it really was like a wild interlocking mechanism that I still don't even know how I thought of that at 20. I was so scared that I was going to jail. Like,
Mm.
but I feel like that's probably in it. But what was interesting was at like the higher levels, the two presidents, you could see it wasn't dictated by just raw emotion.
No.
It was like our president was like, I'm not going to feed you to the wolves because one, I like
No.
you, but two, that's a bad precedent.
Correct.
Hey, dude, this fraternity will sell you out, by the way.
Nobody will trust me again.
No one wants to go into that fraternity. Oh, they're a bunch of
Yeah.
fags.
Yeah.
They're like, but he's like, I'm not putting anything on the line for you. Like,
Yeah.
because he's like, I would have shot you. I'm like, you're not even wrong.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, all right, so take everything we now know and now apply it to what's happened over the last 2 weeks. What has happened over the last 2 weeks? I is it
Let's go back all the way to 2016
all
when,
right? Yeah.
right? What has been happening? It's great power, the actual men in the room, right? The adults, but the men in the room with their women behind them, of course, right? Because our women have to give us, the testosterones, our women have to give us permission to do the thing we got to do. Why? Because it's the fruits of their wombs that pay the ultimate price. So
Mm-hmm.
we always talk to our women when it's the real hard things, right, that we got to do, where there's some people going to get killed, our people, and we talk to our women and we make sure, ladies, are we doing this? Women, are we doing this? We have to, and here's why. They give us permission, and then we go do what we got to do. So it's not like we're just dictating or in control, et cetera. It doesn't work that way, right? Women got true power is always in the hands of our women. Why? Because of that very statement. It is the fruits of women's wombs who pay the price for everything, right? We need to all remember that, especially you barren women who've never had kids, who are doing your Xanax and your pot and your cat piss and your boxed wine, trying to dictate the world, right? Trying to drive the world in the ground. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't give a damn about what you have to say. I care about the women who have kids, right?
Yeah.
And what they have to say. And not all of them either, because a whole lot of them are sacrificing their freaking kids, because that's another ancient thing, right? Vast numbers of women are conditioned and oriented over millions of years to sacrifice their kids in conflict.
Mm.
And if you can take that conflict, take away the wars, take away the need for physical protection, right? They sacrifice their kids in other ways, like transing them. I'm making the sacrifice of my child. I have value as a lower status woman in this system, right? So going all the way back, 2006. And again, I think this will launch sometime when the Kennedys were killed. I think,
Yeah, that's
sometime
that's when
late
it started.
60s, early
Yeah.
70s, right? This was slowly, carefully putting everything in place, the matriarchs coming together and finally getting on getting over their empathy and their, weaponized empathy and weaponized compassion and, you know, investing a lot of money through philanthropy and corporate effort, et cetera, in trying to change the direction of where things going. But sometime after 2012, they realized and accepted, no, that's not going to work. We're going to have to fight. And we're going to have to give our men permission to go do what you have to do.
In terms of the specifically the tit for tat with Iran.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's honor. That's two men having to duel because of a matter of honor. And instead of going out, and this happened in dueling, by the way, you don't necessarily shoot the guy to kill him. Sometimes you shoot him if you can. Shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the arm. Miss.
Unless you're Andrew Jackson.
Unless you're Andrew Jackson.
Andrew
Yeah,
Jackson,
or Aaron Burr.
yeah, Andrew Jackson just wanted to kill. Old Hickory. But like, is that how it's? Because so the whole tit for tat thing, sometimes it's in the wake of an actual real
Yes.
thing. Like
Yeah.
what I did
Because
was
that created the debt of honor.
well, yeah. So like what I did
Right.
was real. There was no honor, and
Yes.
that was just
Yeah.
that was me
Yes.
drunk.
Yes.
Whatever. It's on.
And
No
in
one.
the old days, they would have taken you out and you would have had an actual duel at dawn with
Yeah, or they just would
seconds
have
and
rightfully shot me at
or
South
just shot
Georgia. I'm
you.
surprised they didn't. But like, well, because no one was there. That's why. But like,
Yeah.
so going up the chain, then
Yeah.
what was Israel attacking then? Whatever day they did that 2 weeks ago. What was that? Real violence, or was that an
That was
honor?
real. No, that was real. That was again layers of things that are happening. But what's happening underneath everything fundamentally is our high-powered women, not all of them, but the healthy ones have said enough. We're not supporting the rest of the world anymore. We're not funding and backing and supporting the rest of the world anymore. And so the empire's pulling back. Has to. So what are we doing? We have to stimulate all of these assets, all of these clandestine, covert, black side assets and operations, military, intelligence, paramilitary, all of this. We've got to stimulate it so that it goes and acts. And what does it do? It highlights itself and it burns itself, et cetera. And then what do? We don't put into a next appropriations bill how to refund it so it can keep rebuilt. Now it's gone. That attack by Israel was legit. It's also legit stupid because the intel was wrong. The intel had been, again, all these algorithms, right? All this narrative crafting was telling them that Iran, right? So never fall for your own psyop. We've been falling for our own psyops, all these operational level peoples, right? Have been falling for their own psyops for like 30 years. Iran's weak. People want to, overthrow their government. You hit them hard enough, the government's going to fall down, et cetera. Well, that's you did a quote unquote decapitation strike. They tried to kill Khomeini. They didn't get him. right? And it didn't fall down. Why? Because these are not mud hut peoples. These are Persians. They have a civilization that goes back thousands of years unbroken. They're not a nation like we think of in the concept of nation states. They're a civilizational people. And you just hit them. Well, they were hit by Alexander the Great 2,000 some odd years ago. And he beat Darius, Xerxes, or whoever it is, and they're still here. Macedonians are long gone. They're just a tiny little thumbnail in the north part of Greece. Persians are still, you know what I mean? So the problem that we have is that estrogens live in artificial narrative realities. And they're not tethered in reality whatsoever because they live parasitically off of the production and the labor of others who are living in reality. And so Israel did a strike thinking it was going to decapitate Iran. There was going to be a regime change. No, you just woke up a civilizational people to being a civilizational people. And you just pissed them off.
Yeah, why did
Right?
it?
It's like, again, like the Irish, right? The Irish, the English peoples, right? On the British Isles. We fight amongst each other all the time. We've been fighting amongst each other for thousands of years, but some foreign enemy comes, we all come together and we used to. We all come together and we fight. We'll get back to battling with each other, clan on
Yeah.
clan later, right?
Why did Israel do it now,
To
though?
try and force the US into because the Praetorians are losing control. And the belief is that the Israel strike would drive the
Gin up
Americans
another
into
quagmire.
would draw us into World War III. And
Yeah.
it would be another front against Russia. They believed that the regime would they just believed their own bullshit and they thought they could draw us into a war. The problem is what they don't realize is that the healthy matriarchs in the United States specifically and their capable men are done. We're done. And we will literally stimulate you to go do stupid actions like this just so you burn yourself out and I don't have to worry about you on the field anymore. All right? I don't need to worry about you and your network and your assets because guess what? You know what Iran's been doing in the last 2 weeks? Going after every clandestine covert network or possible clandestine covert network anywhere in Iran and probably in Pakistan and border areas, etc.
Yeah.
It's certainly Iraq. What do you think Russia did after the little pinprick strikes on, drone strikes on their nuclear fleet? Same thing.
Yeah, there were a lot of probably untelevised executions, but like the hunter killer teams.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's because it's the catch 22. It's like either the Mossad is competent, which they are, okay, and they have all these
But
things, and
mhm.
they're impressive, and if they have all that, well, then that also so they knew where all these guys were with all these things and all these enrichment. Yeah, they got this, that, the other thing. Well, then that also means that you knew that they had removed all of the refined material. You can't have one or the other. You can't either they're
Well, they
just
went for
a bunch.
regime
Yeah,
change.
they're a
It was
bunch of
never about uranium.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
They're a
Yeah.
bunch of silly heads, and they had no idea Iran was moving it. Well, then you would also not have the intel to hit all these moving pieces at the same. So it's one or the other. Are you the
Yeah,
best
yeah,
ever
yeah.
or not? And
Yeah.
that's the whole October 7th thing. Is like so they control all of our politicians through a bunch of kids on an island in the Caribbean. Yeah, they're the best. They did 9/11. They killed Kennedy. Yeah, they did it all. And then they don't know about what's happening next to them. It's one or the other.
Out of
It's just one or
Qatar,
the.
which is completely owned by the intelligence
So
community
that's
and
what I
has
mean.
been
It's like
since its founding.
so it's a
Yeah.
lot. So you just have. It's not even like you're pro or anti anything. It's just a logical. It's just a logical walking through. It's either
Well,
it's the CIA stupid or they're not. And so when you
they're
look at
not stupid, but what they are fundamentally mistaken about is that they think that we're
probably a
still,
hubris, yeah,
well, it's there is a certain point where she's yelling and screaming at you, or some effeminate dude or some bitch is yelling and screaming at you and pushing you and shoving you, and she's getting away with it because you don't want to hit her.
yeah. You don't want to clock
You
her.
don't want to knock them the out. It's going to look bad. People are going to come after you. You might have to deal with the cops, right? All of this, but they're coming after you. But there's a certain point when one of them pulls a knife.
Yeah.
or a gun, or they're getting somebody else involved. It's somebody that, and you know what? I'm gonna knock your ass out.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to worry about it. So what I'm saying is that they know this, right? If anybody's been through this kind of divorce, which is really what's happening on a global scale right now, anybody who's been through this divorce has gone through this unreal freaking kind of space where they just push and push and push and push, and they get the lawyers and they come at you, and everybody's coming at you in the information space, and they've got a private investigator and they've got a marketing firm that's doing crisis messaging, and it's like unreal. Anybody who's been in a big divorce, right?
Mm.
At a certain point, they know though, right? Well, they will continue to push because for years you never fought back. Maybe you had an argument here and there,
Sure.
maybe you this or that, but you never actually shut them the down in equal measure to how they're harming you. And what they believe is that you'll never will, that they've beaten you, that you're weak, that you're stupid, that you're incompetent, that you just don't have the balls to do it. Well, unfortunately, that's not true anymore. Right now, we have leadership in place, not just here, but in Russia, in Iran, in China, in Africa, in places now, et cetera, where we're like, go ahead and try it. And I'm going to give you an example of why I think Trump is the perfect guy for today, where the United States is
Give me 1
today.
second. My
Yep.
dryer's going off. I'm gonna go ahead. Give me
Go
1
for
second.
it.
Yeah.
Keep going. So,
Just plug your shit. Tell everybody where to find you.
all right. So, ianburlingame.substack.com. Most of my writing stuff's there, but also on X, Ian Burlingame, at subs or on X/Twitter. And then there's a couple books on Amazon. The Eternal War, I think, is a important read. And then there's The Art of Being a Man, which is 113 meditations on manhood, to be followed here at some point, hopefully in the next 6 months, with another one called The Art of Being a Noble, which is again meditations on how princes have to conduct themselves, on nobility, on the relationship between the people and the prince. Trump's perfect guy for this time, for aside from all these other, because he's been through very substantive divorce and he's been through very substantive bankruptcy. And that's exactly where the United States is right now. We're going through a global divorce, right? We're divorcing that bitch from Europe that is Europe, right? That crazy, insane, estrogen-driven, malevolent freaking bitch that's Europe. And we're going through a bankruptcy because we've got to, in that divorce, we've got to restructure all of the debt that she drove up. And we got to do it where it's minimum damage to the kids and minimum damage to the family's assets and minimum damage to the community, the global community. We got to do all this stuff. And guess what? This guy has done it. When was the last time we had a politician, somebody in some high level president political office who had the exact right, life experiences for the time that we're in? Because that's it, for all intents and purposes, that's exactly what's going on. We are finally divorcing that bitch from Europe after hundreds of years, 340 years, and we're going to have to restructure all the family's debt that she ran up.
Do you think, and I always have to be wary, one, because I think it's retarded, and two, because in the past I have succumbed to it, and I think it's intellectually lazy to call something 5D chess. Like, I really don't. Those examples are few and far between.
That's estrogen thinking.
Yeah. No, it's all part of a grand plan. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, I do think there is, because it feels logical to me. It kind of feels like, if you want to look at it from a pro-Trump 5D side, which is so full.
I think he's playing 2D chess. It's just nobody remembers what the hell 2D chess is anymore. Chess, because we've been playing all these higher level abstraction bullshit, and he's just playing 2D chess, and that just throws everybody off.
Technically, as an aside, chess is 4D chess. It's in 3 dimensions plus time. So
Well,
shut the f up. Not you, but like, I was here. It's
true.
4D chess. I'm like, that's chess. This is 4D
That's actually
podcasting.
true.
X, Y, Z, and then time.
Yeah.
Anyway, if he hits these nuclear facilities, Yes, that's absolutely what intentional or not, whatever. That's absolutely helping Israel. Okay, but if you wanted to look at it a bigger picture and be like, it does kind of nullify what could have been a quagmire
Yes, which
because
would have
you've
with
gotten
World
rid
War
of the
III.
real. That'd be like if
Pakistan had said, "We will defend Israel. We will
that's what I
defend
mean. Is like
Iran with our
it'd
nukes."
be like if September 12th ground branch killed Bin Laden. You'd be like, yeah, they did it. We now know. We looking back in time, we'd be like, oh, you completely negated the entire GWAT. That's
Correct.
what it could
Correct.
be.
Correct.
Is you hit the well now
Correct.
there's no reason for we got to go stop their nuclear no, you Trump should bomb them. They're gone.
Well,
They're
so two
gone,
sides,
but
right? Two sides, right? Um, One, very much to what I was saying, we've allowed a potential very dangerous enemy. What was Operation Maxwell Epstein really? And that goes back to Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, right? What was that really? What was that infrastructure? It was human infrastructure that was being put in place. And that goes way beyond the Epstein Island stuff. It's all the funding, investing, shares at universities and endowments and all these other things. So what was that? And that's what's getting undone in the Israel-Iran thing. That's getting destroyed. The other side was letting Iran know we can bomb the out of you and there ain't nothing you can do to stop us.
I feel like that's always been known by them.
But you've got to see it. The
Sure, you
Iranian
gotta, yeah.
people have to see it so that when the Ayatollah, the supreme leader and the president, et cetera, back off the council, because it's not just one man again. Even Iran isn't dictated by one man, right? But when the council, the Iranian Leadership Council says, okay, this is what we're going to do, measured strike, et cetera, the people, right? The actual Iranian people can see on TV in no irrefutable way. Yes, we can hurt Israel, and they did badly. I mean, just smashed it. On the other side, they can see, well, but they can, America can hit us. And so it's again, it's like the bar fight, right? How do we get it to where it's down to the two guys? And then how do we introduce just the right amount of energy and effort so it just doesn't, hey, people, this is going to go to violence, but it can get out of control real quick and real bad. So we might want to all back down. And it's not the three, the two in the fight and you as the bouncer. It's the crazy bitches on the outside on both sides now. They're egging everything on.
Screaming.
There's the ones you're messaging, right?
I just thought of something. Back to the whole intelligence has a shelf life. It's like, okay, so if Israel does this, then
Networks,
sure,
networks.
you burn this, that, the other thing, all well and good. Yeah, but then it's also the other side is like it also might just be close to expiration. If you've already put this much money and this much sacrifice, and maybe you can't get the big enchilada with it, but if you can get something from you've already sunk the cost.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you can
yeah,
get a
yeah.
little return
Yeah.
on investment,
Yeah.
would it have been more valuable to do it 10 years? Maybe, but maybe now it's like, yeah, but we can still get something out of it. We can
Well,
still
it's negotiations at the table,
sell it for
right?
scrap metal. Well, you can still
Yeah.
get something out of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So the family, we're reorganizing the family. So the divorce is happening, right? The two patriarch and a matriarch are divorcing. And it's an acrimonious divorce, but there's other participants in that. Other cousins, aunts and uncles, kids that are involved in the divorce, picking one side or the other, seeing an opportunity to get something out of it as the assets or portfolios parsed up, et cetera. And they're all angling for their own freaking negotiation power as well.
Do you think though? So, because I think it was like a couple years, maybe like 1 or 2 years ago, but like U.S. Air Force put up a video on YouTube, and it was from the cockpit of the B-2. Which up to that point, that action of putting a video from the cockpit of I think the last guy to disclose B2 information was some Indian guy that worked for Grumman or something. He's in ADX Florence because he had shown something about the propulsion. B2 is the crown jewel of the Air Force that we know of. The B-21 Raider, which was officially unveiled 2 years ago, and it's the successor to the B2, and it looks the exact same, but it's probably just got some crazy metamaterials on it or whatever. You almost wonder, it's like if we have the B2, and, God bless, we never had to use it for the big one. You never had to go bomb Shanghai. But if you've got this, its first flight was 1989. You've had it for 36 years. They're $2 billion a pop. It might be like a sunk cost thing. Yeah, let's go. We already paid for it. Yeah, go, bomb Natanz. You already got something from it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just looking at it purely from like,
Well, we didn't even use the biggest bombs.
no, but I'm saying forget the bombs. The B2.
Uh,
It was probably wonderful validation of like it does work, you know, because we had flown into Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, come on, we've flown into Iran. All right, it does work. There's a little value there to even show like Russia and China, like, hey, look, this old thing is still killer. And then you probably get a whole, I mean, God knows what kind of SIGINT and ELINT you get off of what they were trying to ping it with and blah, blah, all that shit. But you almost got to wonder if there's just some like sunk costs. You know, the same way, like, I mean, we're absolutely making a penny off Ukraine. We got all this old shit that's expiring anyway. Like, we'll give it to them. And I know that's not all of it. I know it's a simplistic.
No, but it's certainly part of it. It's, there's 15 years of rebuilding the inventories now with newer shit.
You got the party. You kind of wants to see
Sorry,
if the vault door.
1.6 million men died to do that, to turn over our inventory.
Oh, it's pure evil.
You know,
I'm not defending it. I'm just from a
yeah.
detached psychopath.
Yeah, no,
logical way.
You're right on. Yeah, you're right on.
Party wants to see if like the vault doors at Cheyenne Mountain work. I'm not saying you want a nuke to go off, but you built this thing. It's been there since the 50s. You know, can it take a nuke?
How many $1 million supercars have been crashed on that very kind of thinking?
Well, that's retarded because they know it works and it's not. But something like this that only is ever used at that level, you kind of want to see if it works. You know, like I wonder.
Well, you just want to let people know that it still works.
Well, then there's that. And then there's that whole logical thing where it's like,
yeah.
you know, hit them on Hiroshima. It's like, yeah, let's really let everyone know that it works, right? I think there probably is some logic behind that. Yeah. Russia probably wanted to just use the Oreshnik. Because I don't think they've used it since.
Nope.
Yeah, let's use it. Hey, everyone else, look, it works. But we also bought it. Fire it, you know? Got all like the old, I think they're all decommissioned now, but all like the Titan II missiles, like, let's, you know, we have these things. They're full of fuel. We paid for it. Like, let's let them rip. Put a Dish TV satellite on it.
Using the same line of reasoning, I know this shit's going to go to her in the divorce, so let's burn it all. Let's burn it all up now. Let's use it all now.
Or the beat, or you could even go further and be like, yeah, this was all made with ill-gotten gains,
right?
You know, honestly, that might even fuck them over more. It'd be like, yeah, we use this, so now everyone else is. They got a whole bunch of, because that's the other thing. It's like you don't, by using it, you also burn. I think it was Caspar Weinberger under Reagan was like he nixed the use of the F-117 and killed Gaddafi, and they were like, well, if we use traditional fighter jets, there's a chance that Gaddafi they'll see it and they'll move him and he'll survive. If we use the F-117, we'll absolutely kill him. And his whole thing was like, yeah, but if we use the F-117, then Russia's going to get very valuable ELINT from it. And I'd rather us continue to win against Russia. I don't really care if sure, let's try to get. And they sent a bunch of like F-18s against it, and they detected it, and Gaddafi survived. But we didn't go and throw the F-117 out there, whose radar, whatever data you could get off of it, it's worth its weight in gold. And the bigger battle was we're trying to take down the Soviet Union. Gaddafi's an underling.
It's the same thing again, back to the divorce, I've got a witness to something that the bitch did that's going to change the whole tenor of the divorce, but I'm going to wait to use that until it's the appropriate time. And I might let her have some of these little wins. She or he, I don't mean to necessarily say that, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm going to let the unhealthy spouse, right, get a little bit of victories and then I'm going to wait the time. And, it's all how you play this game.
It was also a crazy use of assets for Iran. So I didn't know this. And this is, again, I always find it suspicious when like 3 hours later, there's already a very highly polished like animation short doc on YouTube. And I'm like, how do you know? How do you know this? Who are you? What State Department's giving you a check? How'd you know about this? I'm jealous. I'm not even mad. I'm jealous. I tell me. Um, I tried to get General Spaulding on here the next day. I've had him on here twice over the years. He piloted
Mm.
B2s. He would not do that. I would imagine he doesn't want to be an ADX. But so we 7 B2s took off from whatever, I think some airbase in Ohio, and went west towards Guam. And then a couple hours later, 6 took off and went east because they're stealth and everything. But at the end of the day, if you have a satellite looking at him, you can't.
Yeah, yeah,
Someone's
yeah, yeah.
watching. China's
Yeah.
watching. Why wouldn't they? It's the right move.
It's like Bilbo Baggins wearing the ring, his shadow could still be seen
Yeah,
within.
it's
Yeah,
and you be like, what are you
yeah,
gonna watch these planes all the time? Yeah, I
yeah.
would. There's only so many. Don't worry about B-52s or you can see that shit. Yeah, if there's a handful of these nuclear bombers, I would imagine you probably want to have a satellite that keeps an eye on them.
It's actually part of the SALT II treaty where you have to
Well,
leave
so
them
you
out in
can
the
see
open,
them.
so satellite can't
You
see
can
them.
see them.
Yes, yeah,
And then
which is why they were able to hit Russia's.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So, but I didn't know. I thought we had just like an idiot. I thought we had maybe flown one, maybe two. It was 7 and then 6. We flew 13. That is such an insane risk of assets. So that tells me that these are already kind of old hat and you want to get something out of them. You just want to see if it worked. There's probably like a morale boost too. Or they're completely replaced already by the B-21 and this was like whatever.
I think it's a different thing. I think what it is what we're seeing. There's a reason we haven't used air power at all to help Ukraine. It's because air power now with hypersonic missiles, etc., air power has become irrelevant. And there's some other much bigger brains than me, and certainly way more knowledgeable people on that. Is that we are now beyond the age of air power,
Yeah.
other than the small, etc. But at sport at King's level, great power projection. Air power no longer has so this might be the last time we use a B2.
Do you think it, yeah, I was just thinking, is this starting to going down? Like, get as much on the solar panels as you can.
Get it
Get
out there,
something out
show.
of the end. You've put
Yeah,
so much money into this.
yeah, yeah,
Get something out of it.
yeah. And we haven't turned a human-made sun on in a long time. So
Yeah.
let's at least punch some holes in a mountain.
Yeah. See if these work. These massive
And we
penetrators.
use 6 of them because, that's a wing and
Yeah.
that looks sexy for
Yeah.
satellite photos when those get released.
Yeah. It's not cool.
It's not cool.
I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, I was like, God damn, because I don't want us to be involved. The other part of me is like, I love the B2 so much. I'm just like, I'm torn, but
Yeah.
I
I
don't.
used to have a girlfriend a long time ago. Her father was a colonel and he was a B2 pilot or
Dude,
wing pilot, whatever, down in Texas.
they're
And
so
that was
cool.
that was her foreplay. She'd take me out to see the
Work on
craft.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those things are alien. But
uh,
so, but then all that is, it's like, so, but nonetheless, and I was talking about this with Ted Eye, is like, no matter how you cut it, whether we should or shouldn't, tactical, blah, 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 all that aside, at face value, it is very significant that we use 13 B-2 bombers to go bomb Iranian nuclear facilities.
it's a show of force.
You think that
I think it's a
maybe
show
I'm
of
a
force, but I also think it again, one of the things that have been demonstrated in the current conflict in Ukraine, et cetera. And I do believe 35s were shot down. That whole meme with that giant sized
oh
aircraft and the
yeah,
people, et cetera, is like for me on the counter information warfare side, like that's the sure sign that actually we did have 35 shot
because now
down,
we're muddying the waters.
right? Because that's how would you do?
I didn't even
Yeah.
know that was
So
based on a real thing though. I thought it was just shitty.
yeah.
I had taken some. So an F-35 was allegedly shot
Well,
down.
they're talking more than one. Yeah,
Where?
sounds like more than one over Iran
Oh,
in the Israeli strike. Just as there were
Israeli F-35s.
F-35s, yeah, there were F-35s destroyed in the previous strike Iran had done in retaliation for the assassination of their people
Oh, I
in
didn't know that was even based on. I thought it was just shitty AI.
yeah, so I can't prove that, of course,
Yeah.
but in information warfare, that's exactly what you do, right? So, um, I've heard this from a couple very credible sources. One of my partners, actually, a former fighter pilot. Air Force Fighter Pilot Academy grad, um, and test pilot and flight surgeon. He was the guy I wanted to be when I was growing up, but I'm colorblind, and not that smart. Um, but it's conversations I've been hearing from some very credible people is that the days of air power are over. That missile technology, ballistic technology, satellite integration, air defense systems, et cetera, have reached the sufficiency to where the days of air power are done.
Well, yeah, yeah.
It's also why we're not, steaming the aircraft carriers into the Straits of Hormuz, et cetera, is because it's not necessarily just the Houthis, it's that air power's done. So why do you steam an aircraft carrier in there? Yeah, it works against little bush conflicts, et cetera, but somebody's got, substantive air defense, and substantive missile technologies, right? What was the thing? Okay, so we used B-2s. They flew around the world. They dropped bombs. Notice they didn't use their anti-air at all.
Iran.
On the other side, Iran. On the other side, Iran surgically, precisely hit an airfield in Qatar. This is messaging and counter messaging. Air power is done. The age of air power is over. And so I suspect, yeah, well, like you said, we've spent $1 trillion on these B-2s over the years. Let's go ahead and use them one last time. Right? It's like I'm 78 years old. I've got a fake hip. I can barely drive anymore. I've got this old 1962 Aston Healy Cobra. I want to take it out one last time.
Yeah, maybe I wrap around a tree, maybe I don't.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah,
Or maybe some drunk illegal T-bones me and takes
yeah.
it out.
Who cares? Let's ride.
That's right.
I don't think I think air power in the traditional sense is over. Why would you? Why would you even, if you could have B-21s that are drones, why would you worry about people getting tired? Because there's a whole pharmacology aspect. They develop all these drugs like adrafinil and
Oh,
modafinil
yeah,
so
I
you can
know.
stay.
That was
All
the
that.
Hells Angels.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that
yeah.
shit. So, like,
Yeah.
I think, man, then there's the I think the most well-known argument, it doesn't really take any brain, but it's the G-forces. But that's more
Yeah.
dogfighting and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I think yeah, I think all of, you know, we're at the end of it. We're at the end of it. Where why would you? If you could have a B-21 that has some form of like micro nuclear reactor on it, yeah, just have it go loiter for 1,000 days up in the, at 100,000 feet. I get all that. I think we're gonna see some kind of cool interim though with aircraft carriers because they're giant moving platforms that we know well. They're not new. We know they have the supply lines. I think what we will see is you'll take off all the aircraft and you'll just have racks of drones, or you'll turn them into missile carriers that are just
They'll get taken out. Problem is, you can take it. One Reznik can take out an entire
yeah,
carrier group. One, right? So there was an interesting thing somebody said. I can't remember. Somebody we both know. I think it was Alex Craner actually, but it was an interesting comment that makes a lot of sense and actually has been used. Is that aircraft carriers make for very good floating hospitals,
sure, yeah,
right?
you can transport.
Very good, floating hospitals, disaster recovery, all those kinds of things. Um, you know, we're we are at a fundamental, and this gets back to what I'm saying. The empire's pulling back. And what is it doing? It has to burn all of its old inventory. So that old inventory can't be used against the heart of the empire.
Mm. Yeah, it might be that not only is like air power waning, the sun is setting on it, and what
Same with sea power.
yeah, whatever the power is, though,
No.
it would people smarter than you and I with classifications higher than you and I are looking at this going. It is waning, but it hasn't waned yet. You can still get some strategic use out of it.
Well, it was to the question you asked about why did Israel move now? Because there's still some value. As you said, we're in that transition. We're in a phase transition. And there is still some value in the phase
Still get
transition, but
some
you got to be
cash
able
out
to,
of it. Yeah,
you can get something out of it. And
you turn in your old iPhone, you
mostly
can
what
get a
you're
couple
getting
bucks.
is some negotiation power, right? The divorce is happening, it's being finalized. There's internal fights happening, coming within, Israel might devolve into civil war here pretty soon. There's a lot of people saying that, right? So there's internal squabbles and internal fights that happen whenever empires pull back, major empires. It almost always devolves into battles and wars and smaller conflicts within the former domains of the empire as they rebalance power and restructure power, and all the people whose power was based off the empire supporting them is now withdrawn, and their people hate them, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of jockeying for, can we get, what just happened with Israel, Iran, and it may still work, is that at least this first attempt to draw the United States into a World War III didn't work.
So they're going to try
There
again.
was a very sophisticated way in which the two leaders of the two countries, without probably ever even talking to each other at all, said, okay, neither one of us want World War III. Neither one of us want this full-scale regional war. I'm going to do something that you can live with, but it does prick your honor. I know you're going to have to respond with an honor code. Let's wait and see. Let's see how good a player you are. I mean, that's how kings play the game. It's like, okay, I have to do this. If you're playing at my level and you get it, you're going to recognize that I have to do this. You're going to also recognize the restraint I used in doing it and how I telegraphed it. And you're going to respond in kind. And then we can work this out. And they're going to come after us. They're going to make all kinds of claims, like the Ayatollahs put a fatwa out on Trump's life and all this other shit that these people trying to draw us into the war, right? Like the claim this morning that popped up on Twitter that the shooter up in northern Idaho was a Russian, right? All this stuff, right? Okay. Are you other world leaders? Are we all actually playing on the same page? And are we all actually interested in the same thing, which is disarmament of the old empire and a move to, let's go ahead and be a multipolar system? Because the next step from here, the crazy estrogens have placed us all in a position where the next step from here is a whole lot of human-made suns go off. And we don't want that. And each one of us has got to deal with far greater threats internally to our own people and our own dynamics and our own frat boys, right? And sorority girls, boy, they do some nasty shit too,
They're
right?
insane.
Right? Oh, I've seen them do, yeah. When I was a much younger man. And okay, world leaders, are we going to do this? That doesn't mean that they're not going to be, the crazy estrogens aren't going to, and again, that's male and female, right? But, that estrogen thinking, unhealthy estrogen thinking is, are they going to be able to force us in other ways? And that's where we need to be careful because, oh my God, they are clever and they are ruthless. And they already articulated they want the population reduced by 4/5 or more, 7/8, right? Actually, even more than that, right? They want it down to 600 million out of 8.5 billion.
They want
right?
15/16, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and they mean that. That's not hyperbole. They've been actively working towards it.
Yeah.
So when the estrogens, the crazy bitch, is already committed to that, and it, and the other families know it, and the other the other partners in the big corporation that is human civilization, the human species, how do you all have to act, and how do you all have to conduct yourself, and what will the estrogen who's trying to burn it all down, what the hell are they going to do next to try and make it happen?
Yeah.
They're not done. They got $100 trillion plus war chest in the spider's web. And they've got assets they've been putting in place since 1940s. And on the British side, the British Continentals controlling the United Kingdom, what would become the United Kingdom, have been at this for 340 years. And before that, the Venetians go back to the 700s. So it's all this infrastructure, all this complex stuff we're undoing. We're not just going back to pre-World War II. We're not going back to pre-World War. What's happening is this total dissembling of this 1,300-year-old frickin' system. And really specifically for the English speaking peoples, because that's all I can really care about. I can't take care for everybody. It's the last 340 years that's being undone
We'll
since the Inglorious Revolution and the occupation of the top of the English speaking peoples. That's what's being undone for us.
we'll wrap it up with. Normally, I don't do this because I think it's a gay and lazy ending to shows, but it's because tomorrow starts. Tomorrow is we're halfway through the year. What are your predictions for the next? And I never do this because I just think it's the gay. What are your predictions and the show? But like because we're halfway, what do you see?
I don't think it's because we're halfway. I think because next year is elections.
No, nothing with the fact that it's halfway. Just what do you see occurring in the next 6? Further escalation between Iran and Israel.
I think it's probably going to flare up again. I don't know. Everything's being done to try and prevent that. I'm already seeing yesterday and today specifically if I was writing the script for the Praetorians and the Estrogens, I would be doing false flags in the United States.
Yeah.
I would be doing everything and then polluting the information space as much as I could, shutting down calm, rational voices as much as I could, so that I can get the American people over the next 6 months or so into a state of war. Because everything about the future of our species right now, and I don't, this is not exaggeration, is dependent upon whether the United States goes to World War III or not. Everything. I mean, we are at quite literally,
Yeah.
we just got to say it for what it is. Are we at a place where this crazy bitch can once again manipulate us into war, into a massive war? If we can hold, knowing that that she's going to make our home a hell, but if we can hold, and not be drawn into war, not tricked into it, not manipulated into it, not forced into it, then our species goes on and, a lot of things happen, a lot of change happens, et cetera, but our species goes on. If we don't hold, there will be 10,000 man-made suns that go off within the next couple of years, if not sooner.
Yeah.
And the problem is the crazy estrogens behind this, that's exactly what they want.
I think the comedian Tim Dillon said this. He goes, Trump, he said this back in like 2017. He goes, Trump, if anything, was born to be the president that dictates whether or not we go, and if we do go, nuclear war. He's like, that might just be a guy
Yeah.
who's like, this is
Yeah.
what he was born for. You don't
I
have
think
to. He's like, you don't have
I
to
think
like him
that's
for anything. I don't think Tim Dillon even likes him. He's like, you don't have to like him. He kind of seems like a guy. Because
so
once you've got the nuclear war, you've already suspended
yeah.
logic. You're in the
So
realm of madness.
I want to take from that because I think that, Tommy, is a brilliant statement because I don't believe that I believe the decision that he and those around him and those behind, right, the matriarchs, et cetera, is, are we willing to go to war in our own country to prevent going to nuclear war? Because that's the decision that has to be made.
Yeah. There's kind of, as with my experience, someone's paying.
There's
Literally or
war no
metaphorically.
matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, someone's
We have to kill
paying.
these. Yeah. Sorry.
But there is a way to, I think the way 20-year-old diplomatic Tommy did was probably the least all around damaging way.
I think that's
Someone still
true.
had to pay, and it was me. I had to hold the bag, but as I should have did it. But like that was a way to everyone kind of won.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, a check was written. I had, and again,
Oh,
rightfully because I did it.
yeah.
It seems a check is going to be written for this. Someone's getting thrown out of the bar. Someone has to hand over their E-Trade savings. But you either do that and then we'll kind of wiggle out with a whole lot of friction, or you do that and everyone dies.
So let's go to Sean Newman's comment and the talk he and I had, right? The first one about the Godfather. Let's go to the Godfather. There are sometimes you go to war with the other families, and then there's sometimes you have to go to war with your own family.
Hmm.
And we're at a stage right now where we have to go to war with our own family.
You know,
Because if we go to war with the other families, everybody dies.
yeah. Yeah, it's the it's the do you shoot down the hijack plane? Well, if you don't, it's gonna crash into a target and kill everyone in the
Yeah,
target and the plane, or you shoot down the plane and you save everyone in the target. No matter what, the
yeah.
planes are dead. It's a shitty thing,
And people die.
but it's just what
That's
it is.
exactly right.
It's what
You're
it
going to have
is.
to deal with the
It's just
decision
what
you
it
made.
is.
And
It's just
yeah, yeah,
grow up.
yeah.
It's what it is.
Yeah. Well, again, back to the bar. There was times where there wasn't anything that we could do but let those two fight it out. Sometimes it wasn't just those two. Sometimes one of us had to step in and fight the other person because we were the only one capable of handling that fight because the person they were trying to fight was just going to get crushed or it was going to get out of hand. There are times in the whole bar scene where we couldn't stop the fight from happening. And it was a matter of, okay, I'm going to step in here. I'm going to fight this dude or these three dudes because that's actually going to keep something far worse from happening.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get beat and I'm going to get bruised and I might get stabbed and whatever, but it's what has to happen or this gets really ugly and really bad. Like, by the way, I know that guy has guns and I know that guy's a hitman for, the
But yeah.
Baldonado family. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick this fight up because if I don't, somebody's going to get shot in here.
Yeah, and then there's like another weird variable where I don't know if we can even apply to this metaphor, but there were times where very few where you would kind of see something developing. And I'd be like, I don't know that they don't have guns. And then I'd be like, how much do I care about my employment at this place? What
Yeah.
am I making? $7 an hour?
Uh,
There's a very real possibility I take off this bright orange security shirt and run the out of here. But that's at
well,
that
we
point,
can't do that here.
at that point
Yeah.
it's chaos.
Yeah.
It's everything's
Yeah.
over. That's running to the bunker because the nukes are flying. What I
Yeah.
was
We
gonna say
can't do
is,
that now. Yeah.
to maybe add on to Tim Dillon's comment about Trump being a nuclear war president, he might also be a president for war in your own country. I mean,
Because that's where we are. This is
yeah,
what's happening more and more as they push is the only option is we go to war to prevent nuclear war. We go to war at home, civil war,
it's
to prevent nuclear war.
because half the country cannot hate him anymore. Like it's almost
No,
comical, but they can't hate him anymore. It's not
no,
like the left has really turned on. If
it's
try to
nothing
throw him in
about
jail,
that.
blow his head off, impeach him, George Floyd
Yeah,
riots, like we know that.
yeah.
And the side that likes him is probably like, yeah, if he has to do this, he has to do this. But there is kind of an interesting point at which like it's like market saturation with McDonald's or something. Like the public perception kind of isn't. The people that hate Trump really can't hate him anymore, and the people that like him are probably like, yeah, I mean, if he has to go to war here to stop nuclear war, I'm kind of burned out too. It is an interesting way where,
You know who's the wild card, Tommy, that I never thought about till you were just articulating? The wild card is the boomers. I just wrote that piece the other day. Everybody thinks me shitting on boomers. It's not actually. It's me recognizing their time and place.
hmm,
Not everybody thinks I'm shitting on, but some people. Um, the boomers started their adult lives with watching their friends go off to Vietnam to die in a stupid, useless war,
mm-hmm,
and they rose up and movements against that.
sure,
Now we're on the verge of a nuclear war, global nuclear war. Are the boomers too comfortable that they just don't care? Or are they too dumb? I don't think they're too dumb, but are they too inured? And, is that, the same generation that as young people rose up across this whole country in a movement, anti-war movement, is now in a war that was horrible, but pales in comparison to
to
wiping all humanity off the planet with nuclear bombs, which they all learned how to hide under their desk,
yeah,
etc.
duck
And they
and
all know
cover.
that's so then the question becomes one of will the boomers wake up to this? Hey, this is where we are. we are at a place where the thing that you feared the worst when you were in your late teens and 20s is now a very real possibility that wipes your kids, your
Mm.
grandkids, your great grandkids, and everybody off the planet. And will you stay, because ultimately they still own 80%, 90% of the assets. They
Yeah,
still are the largest, most powerful voting bloc. They are the ones that are really in power still.
absolutely. No, they're not. They're not done. No, absolutely. I have
They're
to.
not.
And
So, yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
no, I was gonna
No,
say.
no, no,
Well,
go ahead.
and I'm also biased because my parents are boomers, and
Oh, mine
legitimately,
too. Yeah,
I legitimately believe I have the best parents imagined. You just everything about
yeah, my parents
it's just
amazing. My adopted parents. Yeah, 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 yeah,
I just
yeah,
and I can't say that enough. And so
yeah,
I look at them and I look at how much like I respect them and with my mom and dad, but like specifically and all my uncles, like none of my uncles they're all doctors, or
yeah,
if they're blue
yeah,
collar they rose to the top. All
yeah.
good people. So I always kind of roll my eyes when people start blaming the boomers. Then the other thing is like this is more of just an aside, is like the people that like hate the boomers for like, you inherited a post-war economy. As another comedian, Ray Kump, says, you're no better than boomers. You're just mad that you didn't get to take the candy. Like that's why
Exactly.
if you're born in
Exact. You're angry. You're the
1958,
middle kid and
that's
not the
and
older kid.
it's fine. You're allowed to be, but it's like everyone alive. Let's take millennials or Gen
Yeah,
Z.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
no one generation at large is exceptional. So if you were born in 1960 with everything with no internet, 15 years after World War II, do you think if you grew up you wouldn't go to Woodstock? Do you think you wouldn't take the cheap
Yeah,
house? Do you think you wouldn't go to
yeah,
college if it only
yeah,
cost
yeah, yeah,
$30 a
yeah,
semester? There's this idea that like
yeah,
the boomers are exceptionally bad and we're all
yeah,
not. You're just mad you
yeah.
didn't. I'm just mad I didn't
The
start
whole
the
world they
podcast
grew
earlier.
up in was created by their parents and their grandparents'
And
generation,
that
just
was
the
on
same
and
as
on and on, and
exactly,
it's just
exactly.
that
They
doesn't take.
are, I will say collectively though, they are a bit disconnected from reality and
Sure, but
selfish.
as I would be if I was born in 19, the whole
That's
conver
or
it's
the 50s. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
in one
Yeah.
year or in a couple generations from
What
now,
was it,
there's going to be all
52?
these tropes about millennials, good or bad, and it's going to be like, you really think
Yeah,
you would have, you were
yeah,
any different?
yeah,
If you were born in 1990 and you're 10 and it kind of ends with 9/11, you don't
yeah,
really know,
yeah,
and some of your
yeah,
friends went and fought, but you're not really entirely sure. And you saw Trump, and you saw COVID, and
yeah.
it's, but yeah, that's it might be that.
It's all up to them.
Yeah, yeah, it might be like, yeah, there is kind of no, it's gonna kind of be shitty no matter what, but you know,
There's an interesting thing there, Tommy. Maybe the boomers were right, but their timing was wrong.
what do you mean with like
The
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 hippie movement?
anti-war fight that they had to fight wasn't in the 1960s, it's now.
Yeah, like now is the time for like get the flowers out,
All of it. All of it.
like
The
it,
willingness to all of that, all the willingness to stand up to the system and the machine and say no.
it's even just more wild, and I don't even want to like harp on it because I feel like these are all like points everyone does, but like not only is now the time, it's so odd when you see how many of those old people that are just like, no fly zone in Ukraine now. It's like, what the are
It's
you were
like
rightfully opposed to Vietnam, but you're for global Vietnam?
or nuclear Vietnam.
Yeah, best case global Vietnam. Best case.
Yeah.
It's so insane. I don't
So
know.
I think there's something here. I've never really articulated. I always appreciate our conversations because sometimes it really sparks something. But I think this is a thing that needs to be articulated to the boomer generation is, hey, you were all right. It's just the timing was wrong. The thing that you were rightfully seeing was coming, but it didn't come in the 60s and 70s. It's now. And you're being misled and deceived and duped by all of this, right? System and infrastructure. But just pause and look a moment and realize that everything you were against was right, but the timing was wrong.
Yeah, you kind of have to dig deep and pull out the bouncer skills again. You gotta flatter the ego. You gotta go, hey, no, you were right. Ignore all the other things you don't like about boomers. Just be like, you had it right.
Right.
You're pulling them to the side. You go, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah,
You go,
yeah.
you had it right. You were just in the wrong time. You were right.
You peaked at the wrong time.
Yeah. I think that's the way to do it instead of you stupid.
Because it's true.
Because it's actually true. That's it's. I don't even know if the bouncer analogy works here because I actually do agree with you. I'm actually like, hey, I actually agree with you.
Yeah, exactly. You were right.
I think that's the way to do it because it is objectively like, hey, you pull back, you terrain, pull up, like.
Yeah. All
right, we'll put a pin in it there for now, for whatever. Appreciate you doing this on no notice. I don't know. I have a backlog of shows. The Graham Moore one's up tomorrow. This will be up maybe
awesome
the next day.
Awesome.
So I don't know. I'll let you know. But
whatever, man.
Yeah. As always, dude, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the talks. And for everybody listening, go in the description. Please go follow his Twitter, his YouTube, all that good shit. And yeah, man, always a good time. I appreciate it.
Till next time, Tommy.
All right, brother. Take it easy.